we tried to get a quick oil change appointment for Dreamboat, and it almost worked. They were willing to do it. We could pull it far enough forward so that the oil would drain out in the pit when we pulled the plug, but the manager decided that without it all the way in, and to stop at the building where the AC was 3 inches away. Under those conditions, it was unsafe because somebody could fall into the pit, because without it pulled all the way in, it left the pit exposed. It's time to do an oil change at the campground. Prepping an old RV for a road trip. There's a bunch of things that you may want to look at before you get too deep in the trip, because things happen. In particular, this old gas tank has a little bit of rusty sediment in it. And the fuel filter, and we're actually running two. There's one here and one up at the carburetor. But the fuel filter does take most of it out, but it can only do so much. And when it fills up, we've got to replace it. So let me show you the one that I've got to replace. You can see there's a little bit of sediment right here. This thing shouldn't be dark brown. That's all because it sucked a bunch of rust into the filter. It should be more of a yellow color. So it's definitely pretty full of junk and in need of being swapped out. Just getting under here to figure out what size wrench I need to put on the plug in the oil pan. And I'm really hoping I can catch it all in the bucket. I've got a 2-gallon bucket. It should be a 7-quart volume. If only I checked the manual. We won't have a problem, I'm confident. Lining up a bucket now. And I'm really hoping I can do this without any kind of crazy drama. Here we go. Let's see if we can crack this loose. Okay, it's moving.
While that fills, do you want to get an auxiliary container of some sort just in case? Or are you just winging it?
Maybe I'll grab the big blue bucket and have it over here.
Watch your head.
All right, it's draining, but it's only up to here. If this is a 2-gallon bucket, that's only less than 4 quarts of oil, and it's almost stopped draining out. If I check the manual, there'll be some in the filter. Got to get that off next. But there may not be any extra oil in this for sure. Manual says 5 quarts. So I did just park it, which means there will be a little oil up in the engine, so I'm gonna let it drain for a while. I'm also gonna crack the filler cap up top just to see if it drains a little more because of that. Missed my glove. It's the dipstick there, and the actual oil filler cap. Old-time cork seal in there. We seem to have a light oil leak from around both valve covers from on top of the engine. It's leaking all the way down, so I can't really tell if it's leaking from anywhere else because it starts at the top. So I want to clean everything up, and then we'll drive it a little bit, see where it's coming from. I am going to take off the filter. I'm trying not to, yep, got it. Trying not to drop it into the bucket of oil so that it splashes everywhere.
Do you want me to get you a plastic, like, trash type shopping bag for the actual canister?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
All right, hang on.
Well, this oil is definitely pure black, so I'm sure its time has passed. Really don't actually know how old it is at all.
Here's a box.
Yep, that's the old filter.
This is the new one. You need to fill it with oil, and don't forget to lube the ring.
Yep, tightening the plug back into the oil pan now.
Yeah, you don't want to forget that.
No. Throwing good oil after bed. Just let it soak in. Fill up and soak in, and fill up and soak in.
You need to get more oil on that, baby.
Working it. I'm trying to get it on there without getting it everywhere.
Oh, it's gonna get everywhere.
It's already everywhere. I'm in denial. Drawn under with a full filter. Got it started.
You want me to come and cross thread that for you?
No, we're just gonna go with normally threaded.
Okay.
To hand tight. to start things off.
All that oil on the exhaust is going to smell yummy.
Yep, it is. Wish I had a funnel that would fit in here.
How many quarts have you put in?
4.
Okay.
This is number 5.
And how many quarts does it take?
Ballpark 7. That's not what's actually in the manual. I can't confidently answer that question because
everybody on the internet's an expert.
Well, what it should have and what it may have for a different oil pan for some reason to have a little more oil capacity. So it may be 7, it may be 8. On the other hand, in the service manual, it should be about 7. Please disregard what he just said. He's wrong.
Okay.
So I'm going to put in this 5 and then check it.
On the dipstick.
Yep. One of the other things is the oil fill runs into the top of the valve cover. So it's pouring oil. We're pouring oil into the top of the engine right now, and it's got to kind of drain all the way through. So.
The longest dipstick we've ever owned.
Yeah.
I can't even get all of that in frame. I mean, we have oil.
We have oil. It's showing full, but I don't trust it.
Yeah.
If this is a 2-gallon bucket, that's hardly 4 quarts. There's a screen in this.
Slowing it down? I'm aware.
Slowing it down. And I'm hoping it's not, the oil's not so bad it won't go through the screen.
It looks like it's going.
We're gonna take the used oil to Napa tomorrow. We've got to get a couple other parts and we can have them recycle it. So after doing the oil change, I know that I've got slight leaks from around the valve covers on the top of this engine. So I want to just give them a little bit of a turn to see if I can tighten them up. Maybe we'll have less oil leaking down and we can figure out where our oil leaks might be coming from. Four bolts per side. I've done 6 now and all of them were barely hand tight with almost no tension on the wrench. I'm putting probably 2 turns in them, so I'm hoping that's what's giving us a little bit of a oil weep down the side of the motor.
Fuel filter.
This is the filter I'm going to remove. I'm taking my 2 favorite pairs of little vice grips and clamped on either side so I have a minimal amount of fuel draining back while I swap it out. So just got this loose enough for a little gas to start dribbling out. Yep, it's running down my arm. All right, tighten back up. Probably wasting 10 cents worth of gas here. And 2. All right. All set. All right, I pulled the vice grips off and the filter filled right back up, so shouldn't have any hesitation when we go to start them. I think we're set here. This side of the filter was the bottom, so that's all sediment that's settled to the bottom side. You can see it's all red stained from the rust that's coming out of the tank. We're having fun under here today. Up next, we're going to do some grease fittings on the drive shaft and a bunch of parts of the suspension. It's just a fairly inexpensive basic grease gun, and I'm going to grease all the Zerk fittings everywhere underneath. There's a Zerk fitting here. Got grease starting to come out here. Give it 1 more squeeze, 2 more squeezes. Yep, I can see it coming out of the splines here. So we're gonna call that good. All right, there's a grease fitting here. can see it coming out here. A lot of old grease in there, but it's coming out fresh. Another one here. The grease gun has been reloaded. This was a 90-degree fitting down. It's hard to get to. I'm glad we have the flexible hose on this. All right, I've got a ribbon of grease that's starting to come out here, so this pivot I think is good. I've got 3 grease fittings on the top of the A-arm for the suspension, so we got grease coming out of these. These are all done. Then there's a parallel piece of this on the bottom, so I'm gonna have to get to the 3 fittings on that from the bottom, plus some of the steering components just up forward have fittings as well. So I'm gonna do those next, then crawl under to get the ones on the bottom side. Just about done now. I found about, let's say 16 fittings all around, either front suspension or steering components. And I am a greasy mess. I'm gonna crawl back under and see if I've got everything tight. Just gonna check for any little leaks or anything, and then clean up my tools and get the cardboard cleaned up.
Someone on Air Forums years ago sent me a PDF of the 1977 Argosy motorhome manual, and then the Chevy P30 service manual. And I printed them out, and I have these 2 giant binders that I keep in Dreamboat all the time.
Looks like this.
That's what they look like.
Trying to determine how much oil I should expect and have to put back in. I searched it up on the internet because that's quick and easy, and I was expecting 7 quarts.
Andrew prefers to look stuff up on the internet, whereas I would prefer typically to go to the manuals that are for this vehicle.
It's a lot of pages.
But it is a lot of pages, and it's very old school. But I have it, so when we weren't sure about the oil, I opened up the binders, and it turns out
The answer's in there.
it is.
This takes 4 quarts plus about 1 quart in the oil filter. So it's 5 quarts total, which explains why we only got about 4 quarts out. And why it seemed to be full when we put 5 quarts back in.
There you go. And
I'm happy we read that versus putting 2 quarts too much in. Yeah, good job. Thank you.